That's funny. All right. Well, hi everybody. Looks like we have Ray. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Um, Jesus. We have Amy.
I'm
Hey, Jesus. Hey, Amy. Hey, Ben. How are you?
Doing
Sean
well.
may be coming in here in a little bit. All right. Well, in the interest of kind of keeping on schedule, I will go ahead and call this. So this is our monthly meeting, right? Because I called last one off because of the 4th of July. So couple agenda items today. I had sent it out. I think maybe the first thing to start with is the conferences that we have coming up in August. So just kind of making sure things are going all right with CHAOSS. So maybe we'll just start there. Whoever's wants to chime in on CHAOSS and how that is coming along.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know about anything new with respect to the last time we were talking about. So
Okay.
you know that we got the program online. People is registering, but I don't know about the number of people being registering. I think that
Okay.
at the end of this month, maybe we're having some numbers. And the last thing with respect to organization is to try to find out whether we're going to sponsor coffee and stuff like that. There is budget.
We're all good with sponsorship?
Yeah, just for minor things like coffee and biscuits and stuff like that.
Okay, that sounds good. Georg, do you know the numbers right now?
I did not look them up. I can do that and get back to you in a few minutes.
Okay, and this would be total registrants at the moment? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. And the schedule, is the schedule all set? Are we good on that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Any other details that need to be attended to that I can help with or anybody can help with? Just kind of waiting, wait until late August. Okay, that sounds real good. Cool. All right, and then obviously Open Source Summit North America. I'm sorry. Did anybody else want to add anything for CHAOSScon? We good? Sean,
We're good.
We see your very. You have a very, very interesting picture.
Oh yeah.
Very tiger.
Oh, I didn't realize my video wasn't on actually. There we go. That's I don't know if it's better, but it's less weird.
Better. So then for the Open Source Summit North America, I think we have 3 presentations that are CHAOSS related at the moment.
I think so, something like that.
Yeah, I think 2 of them are associated with diversity and inclusion, and 1 is associated with kind of the growth maturity decline.
Yeah. So there is a birds of a feather. There is kind of hacking corner or something like that.
Okay.
And then there is a talk on diversity and inclusion.
Yep.
And then I don't remember if there is anything else.
I think those are it. So Jesus, who from Bitergia is going to come?
Sorry?
Who all from Bitergia is coming?
I'm coming, and Manrique is coming as well, and very likely some of the developers. So it's still not clear, but very likely Santi is coming to the hack meeting or to the hack corner or whatever.
Okay.
And maybe Valeria, but Valeria is having some issues with his passport, so I'm not sure he can finish on time, but still.
Okay. Ben, are you going? OSS North America?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Daniel, I'm guessing you'll be there. Ray, are you heading over there?
No, unfortunately I can't. I have a conflict, so I had to turn down. I mean, I had a non-metrics related talk accepted for the conference too. I had to turn that down, but
okay.
Oh well. But
okay. Well, we'll miss you. You will be sorely.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll miss being there too. But
anybody else on the call heading over there? I'm always trying to kind of keep track of who's coming.
I am. To the where?
Just Vancouver, late August.
I'm a question mark. I may be there.
Maybe. Okay.
I'm also going.
Okay. All right, I may actually kind of send out a email to the list just to kind of get any sense. I don't know if it matters. It's kind of nice to get a sense of who's coming with respect to CHAOSS. Okay.
It can be good for having an idea for the hack corner and all of that too.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, sounds like.
On that note, we currently have 37 people registered for CHAOSScon.
Oh, that's great.
Should we have a list of attendees or registered attendees on the CHAOSScon website?
I don't think so, because maybe somebody don't like that to be public. Because
there might be some privacy concerns. Like,
yeah,
I mean, having a name might be one thing. Like, you definitely can't have other like identifiable information, I don't think. But
yeah, as far as I know, we didn't ask for permission for publishing the name on the website.
Sure. Okay.
Well, I don't think I'm registered, so it'll go up to 38.
Good.
So me being lazy over here. So if you have a chance, if you're going to be there the day before Open Source Summit North America, please come over. I'd love to have you. So, all right, cool. Anything else with respect to conferences?
I think several of us are coming this week. There's a community leadership summit before OSCON this weekend. So I know Danny and Sean, at least two of you will be there. Yeah. And Ildiko, I don't think is on the call, but she's coming too. And I think Danny, you have a session on like a diversity. Is it a breakout session, if I recall?
Like, yeah. Emma and Sean and some more people.
Yeah.
And I'll be there. Yep, this is Nicole.
I'm Nicole.
Yep, obviously. Yeah, Nicole, it's hopefully easy commute for you, right? But
yep.
And the other thing I was going to mention was that it's pretty informal, but we can also propose like unconference sessions. So if there are other topics that we want to lead, I think when we all are all there on Saturday, in the morning, we can kind of huddle about like ideas. Obviously, we have a good topic with diversity, and I mean, Sean, I don't know if you want to have any like a separate session on like growth, maturity, and decline, sort of a pretty informal, like a discussion session that you could lead, and that might be So we can basically there'll be a time where we go up in front of the room and propose ideas, and then people kind of sign up, and then depending on how many sign up, those get selected, and I think that would be cool. So
it's this Saturday? Is that right?
This Saturday and Sunday. So before Open Source Conference starts next week.
And there is a social event on Friday night and Saturday night. So
cool.
Hope to see you there.
Is it like a presentation? I kind of never really understand how that. They seem like they change their formats every now and then.
I think it's slightly changed. Go ahead, Danny. I'm gonna post a link on the chat.
Okay, thank you. So basically, there are some keynotes by some people, and then there are some unconference session. It happens that this year they decided to have half of those in advance, so people know the kind of things that they are, let's say, facing during the weekend, and then the other half, those will be decided during the conference. In any case, all of those are going to be a conference session, from my understanding. And the idea in a conference session is that basically you present the topic you would like to discuss, and there are 8 or 9 in parallel. People go to each of those, and then you will be there, kind of a group of, I don't know, up to 10 people, 20 people at most. Okay. And then, but those are really interested in that topic. So even the people that are kind of leading the proposal or the conference session, they don't really need to be experts, but it happens that they have, for instance, an issue or problem or a community management thing that they would like to share with others, and perhaps the others have some more ideas. So it's more an open discussion.
Gotcha. Okay, that sounds good. Okay, it sounds like there's a lot kind of happening. So what I'll do in the minutes when I send this out is I will kind of track down all of the talks that are going on at the Community Leadership Summit that are on the schedule, and also track down, obviously, CHAOSScon, and then the talks that are going on at Open Source Summit North America. And I'll make sure that I get those into the minutes that we can share with people to the list, so they kind of know what's going on. Cool.
And you can take, I would also get those on the website. And
Good
currently we have on the community page of our CHAOSS website a list of the conferences and talks.
Okay.
And so I hope it's mostly complete, but I might have overlooked one or two.
Well, maybe I'll just link out to that. That would maybe make more sense. Is the web page up to date? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's
Okay.
as far as I know of all the sessions that we have.
Okay. Okay, cool. Right on. Any other conference related items? Are there any that we should be keeping on our radar coming up in the future?
So I know from the Diversity and Inclusion work group, we have submissions to the Open Source Summit Europe. And I'm thinking about MozFest, the Mozilla Festival as well.
Okay.
And Mozilla Festival, especially because it's a very interactive setup.
Okay.
And so it would be good to work through metrics or prototype metrics or figure out how people would react to them or something along those lines.
Okay.
Also, open source, not open source, OpenStack Summit will be in Berlin in November.
Okay.
From the diversity side, I don't know if it's too late, but Grace Hopper will be end of September in Houston, Texas.
Where is it?
Grace Hopper,
But where is it?
Houston.
Houston. Okay.
So you know that I like to be devil's advocate, and but what is the point of going to all these conferences when the most important goal is to really create something that is useful?
Sure. So
and I think that it goes in line with the diversity. So what makes diversity so difficult from the point of view of our group? Because it seems that it's a matter of defining just metrics that proportionally measure who is diverse, which is relatively straightforward. So what is difficult about it? I don't really get that part.
So I think
I think it's related. So I think both are related. So I think that first, why is that we want to go to all these conferences when what we really need to do is create metrics? And the second one was, what makes this particular metrics difficult?
So I'll be first. So trying to answer the first question, well, basically it happens that at least me personally, I'm going to those conferences in any case. So, it's let's say easy for me to say, well, I can send another talk about this topic because it's interesting for me from a personal point of view, perhaps from a company point of view, and of course from a CHAOSS point of view. So it's just a matter of sending an abstract and preparing a talk. So other people may have other interests, of course. And trying to answer to the second question, and again, this is my personal opinion. For instance, in our case, in the OpenStack gender report, we were trying to focus on a specific metrics from a quantitative point of view. While when we started to talk to Amy and to Emma and some others, then we realized that there is a big amount of topics that we didn't cover. So the work that we have so far is that we are trying to land a common view of what to measure. And we are right there. So we are still, let's say, agreeing in what to measure.
So why don't we do that more empirically? It seems to me that the real problem is to do the science behind it. So have empirical studies that go to the people interested and ask them exactly what they need. It seems that it's more, so currently it seems that many of the metrics are more like, let's sit and think about what we can measure. And in that line, we can go infinitely into that. We can always create new metrics. But what really matters is like, how do we determine their value? And I think that's more of, that is a general comment with respect to many of the metrics that we have or might come up with.
Yep, I mean, I agree with you. Perhaps at the beginning, we were focusing on the things we can measure and not the important things that we should be measuring. And having other points of view was really helpful. And basically that's the reason, because it's taking, let's say, long in the diversity and inclusion working group, because we are still defining what the important things are. And we are still there, I have to say. But
I mean, I agree with all of that. What I'm essentially saying is, rather than going out and ask people randomly for opinion, why not doing it empirically?
Yeah, but we are not doing that in that way, because the point is that, for instance, what we did for OpenStack was to ask people in the OpenStack based on experience and the feedback we had from some submissions and talks.
I understand that, but why not empirically? Why not say, let's have a survey that says, these are the points we want to ask, and every time we talk to somebody, we ask them those questions?
Yep. And for instance, Amy is working on that kind of surveys. So perhaps she can elaborate a bit more here. So the point is that each of us has a different role in somehow and different skills. So for instance, I can produce quantitative data, but I'm probably not the right person to produce a survey. But perhaps Amy and Emma and Nicole here can help a lot with that. So, but I mean, your point of view is pretty good. So it's something to discuss. Yeah.
I mean, we're trying to use some of the same questions between the different surveys. I know OpenStack, we're using some of Mozilla questions, especially like the gender one. I really liked how they broke that out. But then we're also going to have within our community different diversity related questions so that we know how diversity affects our individual community. So you've got the overall ones that I think will eventually be shared between the different communities, and then more specific ones to the individual communities.
So I think we are having two different surveys being talked about right now. One is the ones that we produce with the metrics and that we can give people to assess their diversity and inclusion or what other open source community help metrics. And the other survey that Daniel brought up is to define the metrics in the first place. And I think that kind of work is where we have the work groups. And so the work groups are responsible for figuring out what method they use to define what metrics they include.
So notice that everything that you have said about this particular metrics, the subset of diversity and inclusion, the answers are generic to any metric that we come up with. And so it seems that the role of the different subgroups is essentially the same. It's just that they concentrate on metrics that measure something in particular. Yeah. So I wonder whether what we need is some sort of guidelines that said, if you're a working group and your goal, of course, is to come up with metrics that measure what you are interested in, is how to determine those ones. My biggest fear is that we're going to become an anecdotal group that says, these are the metrics that are needed because this is what we think they are. This is what the people we have talked to say, without really scientific backing. And I think that the thing that metrics need the most is scientific backing, because anybody can come up with metrics and anybody can claim that they're good. The question is, why is that they're good? And why do they measure what is supposed to be important?
So I think it's a point well taken, Daniel. I just wrote down empirical guidelines for determining the metrics that are relevant, I think is what you're getting at. Is that correct?
Yeah.
But I think that's a point well taken. Jesus?
What I don't get is what you mean by scientific or by empirical. Because if you just go to the street and ask people which metrics are relevant to you, that usually doesn't produce any sensible output. That's different. That's different from coming to a certain working group or to a certain, let's say, number of people who are stakeholders or something like that, and asking them, these specific metrics tell you something.
That's right.
The other one is quite different. And my impression, at least in the working groups, is to try to come out with a set of metrics that we think, from our point of view, that they could be useful. And of course, then you need to go to the real world and ask people and tell them, this is useful for you. But usually what you need is not only to tell them about the metric, but to tell them about how the metric applies to certain projects so that they can really feel what the metrics is about. And it's not yet a theoretical construct, but something very specific that tells you something about a specific project, and that's different.
I think that you are breaking apart what I'm saying into two stages. The first one is, we think these metrics are good. So that's kind of the first part of the study. This is the hypothesis. So this is where you sit together and you come up with them. And I think for that, the groups can actually just essentially discuss, take input from different stakeholders and come up with metrics. Now you have these metrics. Now the point is, how do you demonstrate scientifically that those metrics measure what you claim, and that they are essentially the best to use, because there will be a lot of correlation between different metrics and different ways to measure it. And my issue is that I don't think that we are only in the first stage. We come with hypotheses that these are metrics that we think that they are good. The value of a group like ours is to make it scientific and demonstrate scientifically that these are the metrics, because otherwise then we are just a bunch of people just come out with metrics.
So I'm happy to try to design something which is scientific, but I find it difficult at this stage, in the sense that we don't even have an hypothesis.
I think that I think that's our goal. I think our goal is to come up with metrics that they are useful to the stakeholder. And I think that that should actually be our goal for every metric. How do we measure that is usefulness? How do we evaluate that the metric is really measuring what it's supposed to be measuring? What are the advantages and disadvantages of each metric? And to do it as scientifically as possible.
So the metrics measure what they measure, and I think if they're objectively described as measuring specific elements of software production, then how someone interprets those is what's subject to debate, and how one applies the metrics, I think, is what's subject to discussion. But I think the metrics themselves are reasonably, just ground out of data.
So then aren't we doing trivial work in that case?
No, because I think bringing the metrics to folks' attention and making them visible in ways that they haven't done before is quite useful. People have lots and lots of different ways that they count these things right now, but they don't have any consistent way of counting them or comparing things with a project that they were on before and the tool that they use in a new project. So I think providing some kind of consistent foundation, I think it has value for community managers, if not software engineers.
Yeah, and maybe it boils down to the following. So we have two different roles here. One of them is engineering, and the other one is scientific. Engineering is about what you just described, creating the infrastructure, the methods.
I would say that human-computer interaction and the interpretation of metrics is also scientific. It just involves social science as well as computer science.
That's right, but interpretation is about what I'm talking about in terms of value. And so I think that part, I agree that is scientific, and how do you present them, etc. And I think that many of us have different interests. My interest is scientific. I think that the engineering part is relatively simple, straightforward. The real difficult issues are the ones in terms of why is this better than others.
But I don't think that framing this is better than other is a way of framing that. Usually, what the interesting way of framing it from my point of view is, this is more useful than this one for this specific purpose. That means that first of all, you need to know the purpose. And for instance, the intentions and the needs of a community manager are way different from a project manager, for instance. Yeah, and the kind of metrics that they need may be different. That's why if you intend to validate it by going and ask people, what's the value you find in this metric? I don't think that's very much scientific, in the sense that people are going to tell what they think, and that's it. And I mean, what you are going to know is how people perceive these metrics to be interesting, but now how useful these metrics are, which is a different step.
So what's I think the use case of different, I think the engineering use cases, which a lot of us are anchored in, are more definitive than the human-centered design or human-centered look at this that maybe a community manager would have. So while the subjectness to interpretation kind of bristles with our engineering sensibilities. I think one thing to keep in mind is that people that are managing communities don't have a window that's consistent across the projects they work on, across organizations necessarily. And, you know, we are giving them something that they can and will interpret in different ways. And I think studying their interpretations is also part of the scientific process. It's just way messier than the actual metrics. So their presentation and interpretation and providing something useful, I think, is one of the really hard problems.
Yeah, it's a really hard problem. But let me even say that we already argued that this is what they might require. This is what they are using. This is the different ones. So different managers require different metrics. We know that anecdotally. We have not even have a proper survey that asks managers, what are the things you're interested in measuring? And I think that the risk that we have is of turning this just into another metrics project that doesn't have a sound scientific backing.
So let me make a comment here. I'll try to just reiterate what I'm hearing here. So I don't think that Daniel is arguing, and Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you're arguing for empirical truth.
That's right.
I
don't think there's truth in here. I don't think there's truth. I absolutely agree.
I think you're arguing for being empirically sound in the process. And I think that's a point very well taken. So I don't think we're aiming for anything that's going to be absolute and universal. There's no law that's going to come out.
That's right. Yeah.
But just
I think you're doing very exactly. I think you're phrasing it very well. I think that what I would like to see is more guidelines in terms of this process that needs to happen for things to be able to be proposed. Why is that they are proposed? Are they proposed because they come out of the brain of somebody, or because there's a survey that says we talk to them, this is what they need, this is what 80% of them want, this is what 30% of them want, etc.
But Daniel, what I don't see is what are you going to ask in that survey?
Well, the first question is, do you need metrics?
But people don't know if people don't know if they need something they never used.
No, but you're already arguing that people don't know. But do you empirically know that they don't know, or do you anecdotally know?
What I mean is that's not relevant in the sense that what you are going to measure is the exposure that they have to metrics, not to which extent they need metrics. You know, it's like asking people who never drink Coke if they think they like Coke. They cannot answer.
The first thing is let's know how many of them are already using them. If that is true, that most of them don't know them, then that's already of value, right? What I'm saying is that you're already full of anecdotal information, Jesus. You're already pushing anecdotal information, and I would like to have sounded truth in terms of that information.
So maybe for me, it's a matter of figuring out how to do that. Maybe when I see the design of some survey or something, I completely agree with it. It's maybe my lack of creativity of how to do that. I don't know.
I agree. I think, as Sean says, that's the difficult part. And I think that's what actually brings the value of what we're doing.
Yeah. So what I mean is, if we have a way of saying this is important because this kind of, I don't know, empirical research says this is important, or this is useful, or this is whatever, I'm more than happy of using that. My concern is I don't really see that path. Maybe if you want, or somebody else wants, we can try to design it and try to say, well, for this specific case, this could be the survey, and these results are going to tell us about this and this and this way. And maybe that could be like the first CHAOSS survey or something like that. And maybe we can learn from it.
Yeah, I don't think
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, I don't think we're going to solve how to set up the empirical process in this meeting. But
no, it's probably out of scope.
No, it's probably a little out of scope in 30 minutes. I mean, basically, when I hear Daniel talk, I just keep thinking of a research paper, and he's talking about the method section. That's what he's talking about.
Yeah, so I talk as a scientist, not as a
such that you're not just moving through the literature review and then right into the findings. He wants some structure as to how anything we present out of again, Daniel, tell me if I'm wrong, but some structure.
No, it's true. Yeah.
As to what we're presenting as CHAOSS, as a project, how we're presenting this information has some soundness to it. Not truth, but it's been methodologically sound to some degree, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I think he's just asking for attention to the process. Is that right, Daniel?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that the way I see it is, can this lead to a paper? And so far, I don't think so.
Well, I think your point too, that these aren't just metrics that just kind of appear out of thin air, but they do have a story as to how they've come to be or how they are important in the wild, whatever it might be.
But it's anecdotal, and that's what is really is bothering me.
No, but I think we can, right. I think what you're saying is currently you believe it's anecdotal.
That's
what
right, yeah.
What I think you're saying is we can tell that same story, but have tighter empirics around it.
That's right.
Yep. So,
in any case, something which is interesting is if somebody comes out with an idea for a survey or something like that, we have plenty of opportunities for having it. The CHAOSS could be one, and the Open Source Summit could be another one, and we could get many answers.
But this is,
my point of view is I don't know how to design such a survey in a way which is useful. But if you, Daniel, or somebody else wants to start drafting something that could be the basis for that, and I agree with all of you, even a small step would be very good. Even maybe a step just saying how much you are exposed to metrics, trying to measure that, for instance. I don't know, something which is simple enough for starting, and maybe leading to a paper, as you said, Daniel, so I don't have anything
in the hopes
against
of
that.
staying on target, time-wise.
Let's talk in Vancouver about it. I think that's probably the best way.
Okay,
And you
good
have
idea.
a lot of interest as well, kind of some soundness around this.
I want to make one point.
Yes,
We were talking about the process in the diversity and inclusion work group as well, with exactly this goal of how do we have a good process. And what we decided in the diversity and inclusion work group is that we document our process through pull requests, through issues, and through emails, and that we include references to other people's work that provide evidence that these metrics are useful and helpful within our metrics detail pages.
Okay.
And that we do a expert review phase several times throughout the process. And Emma had kicked that off 2-3 weeks ago, where she posted on her blog and asked experts to give feedback and reiterate on it that way.
Do you have that written in the work group?
We might have that written in the work group or on an email.
Can you track it down? That might be a great place to start.
Yeah. So I think it's very good, Josh, but don't confuse traceability with empiricism, okay? What you're discovering is traceability.
But I think it's a good place to start.
Yeah, no, I think it's very good. I think that is something that we should do for everything that we come up with.
Yep, and if we can be transparent in the process that explicates some rigor to the process, that's an improvement, and we can continue to improve that over time.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you. We're out of time. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So let's see. On my agenda, still we did have, speaking of metrics, any updates on the metric side from folks? I know that Ben has brought one forward, and Georg has brought one forward, and maybe these can start serving as test cases as to how we can rigorously look at these things. Georg or Ben?
Yeah, so I think what's really most important for what I'm looking for, and I think a lot of people would agree, granted I don't have any empirical evidence behind this, that we need, all these metrics are really great for us geeks that just like to look at data and collect data. But when it comes to actually like accomplishing something with these metrics, we need some way of conveying some sort of value that is meaningful to non-metrics people. And this is actually the talk that I proposed for CHAOSScon. This is actually something that I specifically am going to focus on. But I think what it's going to take is combining all of these like component metrics that we've come up with into something that actually creates like some sort of narrative around it. And yeah, we're calling, like, I think derived metrics seems like probably the best name, or meta metrics, or whatever they are. They need to be set up in a way that that allows me to like create a narrative, essentially. And they necessarily don't have to inherently have value to them, but they need to be set up in a way that allows me to illustrate value as a result of them, right? So like the one that I came up with is development velocity, and that is pretty simple because it really only takes into account 2 metrics right now. Could potentially add more, because I think one of the issues with tracking commits as a metric for how quickly development happens is that if you start saying more commits means more development, then suddenly your developers might just stop rebasing their commits, and instead of, when they have a pull request, instead of having 1 commit, they might have 20 commits that each have 1 tiny change in each of them, you know? So I think there is some sort of inherent risk in making sure that the metrics don't influence behavior, but I still think there's value in creating these somehow. So yeah, I'd be interested to see what other people have to say on this.
So for the diversity and inclusion work group, this story behind the metrics is part of our detail pages. And that's what we start with, where we provide a short text or overview of why this metric is helping communities and why tracking it is important.
Is that the kind of narrative you're talking about, Ben?
Yeah, I guess that's I think it's getting towards that. Yeah, I guess it does kind of sound like it's going in that direction. But I think a lot of the value is not going to be in the individual metrics themselves. Some of them might be able to like create value statements out of them just based on a single metric, but I think a lot of it is going to take combining multiple metrics into some sort of comprehensive or more inclusive set of data that actually has more meaning than just, you know, 1 single number.
I am kind of curious from Jesus or Danny's point of view, you know, doing this at Baccasia for a while. Is that something you've seen? Kind of in the...
Can you repeat?
So the idea that there's more value in composite or meta metrics than there is in just singular metrics.
No, I share the idea of Ben, of not only having like meta metrics, but groups of meta metrics that can tell you the story about what's happening from a certain point of view. So for instance, when you look at just say a number of commits or something like that, it's really telling you nothing. When you're looking at things like how is this behaving over time, which is basically what Ben is looking at, and you, for instance, combine that with the composition of your community, for instance, you can find ways of characterizing the project and saying this is a project which is accelerating with a growing community, for instance, based on 2, 3, maybe 4 metrics at the same time. And that may allow you to characterize the project and to know in which, let's say, phase or which kind of project you are dealing with, and then tracking that. Because, for instance, in some cases, accelerating of development is an important goal, and we want to have a larger and larger community and more activity. And forget the reason, but the thing is that somebody decided this is important for our community, or the community itself said for 2 years we need to accelerate a lot, and then you can use those metrics for tracking. And I'm not completely sure, but I think that Ben goes along those lines. So trying to define scenarios where I would like to know things about the project, and then trying to find out metrics for characterizing those scenarios. Am I right, Ben? Or?
Yeah. And going back to your example on people giving opinions on Coke, I think this for non-developers, this is the introducing them to the Coca-Cola, right? Like this is if we can demonstrate this stuff, then this is what. Once people see that this type of thing is possible, then they're going to start having more ideas about what they actually want out of some sort of metric system. Because when I gave that talk last year at it was a GrammarCon then, I think a lot of people in the audience they had no idea that you could use GrammarLab to get the sort of data that I was pulling out of it. And it's just because I was taking it a couple of steps further than any of the reference material on the web, and just deriving a little bit deeper information out of the metrics that were available.
Yeah.
I mean, I think another point is, I think Jesus kind of alluded to this. I think it's important to look at a trends over time, and I'm somewhat reluctant to use a composite metrics, because I feel like, I mean, this is my personal bias. It introduced another level of indirection, which can hide details. And I mean, one is I think it's important to look at trends over time. And the other thing is, depending on where you are in terms of your community, you might have a different focus area in 2 years. Like right now, it might be all about velocity because you want to grow the community for obvious reasons. But in 2 years, your focus might be different, and you need to look at a different sets of data. And I think it's important to, I mean, especially to senior management, it's important to educate senior managers on how people should view the data, because I mean, a lot of them are not really close to developer community, so they tend to want to look at things very simplistically with a couple of sets of numbers, which is always kind of a dangerous thing to do. So I mean, it's important to use different sets of metrics as a tool to show health of the community, or however you want to measure it. But I think it's you need to look at trends over a longer period rather than focusing on a snapshot, and also look at, depending on where you are in the community, maybe you need to look at different sets of metrics, even if it's the same community. So just, I mean, my 2 cents. But,
yeah. So a snapshot can be useful as well. But so here's the thing. So if we're talking about development velocity, what I would expect is, as a project gets more mature, the development speed is going to naturally slow down, just because it needs as many new improvements. So this is always, the metrics are quantitative. It's purely quantitative. You always have to do a qualitative analysis on this in addition to that. But the thing that the metrics often do is they give you the point to look at for where you need to do your qualitative analysis. So if suddenly you're getting 0 commits after 2 years of getting hundreds of commits, something happened. So that's the point where you want to investigate, right? So the point is that you create some sort of statement that actually has meaning. So in terms of velocity, you can say development was accelerating for the first year, and then it slowed down the second year, and then the third year it's stagnant. And that could just be because your project is mature and doesn't need nearly as many contributions anymore. So, saying that it slowed down doesn't necessarily mean that it's good or bad. It's just something changed. So we need to understand why that changed.
So some comments. So I think that we need to be more proactive in our nomenclature. So for example, the way that you're using velocity, you really are arguing about acceleration. So the change of velocity over time.
It's both, because velocity can be, we had 12 commits this month. We had
that's right. So
10 commits last month. We know that it is faster than last month.
But the change of velocity becomes acceleration. But anyway, so that's not what I wanted to mention. So I think that what really happens is that every metric that we have measures the traces of development that we have. So we have, it's almost, we are like archaeologists looking through remnants of development. And so the real challenge is that there is a gap between the metric and the interpretation of that. And I think that every metric should have with some guidelines of interpretation, some traits of validity. So what are the potential challenges of using that metric for that interpretation? How it can be gamed, and perhaps even how that metric has been observed in open source projects. So you can actually say, oh, this happened in this project, and this is happening in my project. So that maybe that actually helps in terms of this gap.
Okay, I do have to, this is good, thank you. I do have a couple things that we need to talk a little bit also about. We have Amy on the line who's going to talk about some of the OpenStack diversity and inclusion report stuff, and we're up at 11:48. This is I wish this could just go on forever.
I think the Open Source Summit will be a really good opportunity for us to.
I agree. I've been taking copious notes, so trying to capture this.
Yeah.
This is good. So, okay, software people, you're up next, and you're on a tight schedule to talk about any updates you want to provide for people on the software that you're working on. This would include Jesus and Sean and Daniel. Again, tight schedule.
So
go ahead, Jesus.
Okay, thank you. So from the Grimoire point of view, we are moving to Kibana and Elasticsearch sheets finally. We are having new panels. We are releasing the new community version of everything very likely this week. So have a look at it, because we are having new stuff that maybe you can be interested in. And related to that, the Google Summer of Code project is going smoothly, I would say. And this week, Pranjal is going to start actually writing the first code to produce reports. Now he has been studying different approaches and so on. So I expect the first code to be ready for the next week. So have a look at it if you want, and any comment, of course, is appreciated.
Great. What are the new panels on? Can you...
Daniel, maybe you can, Danny, you can comment a bit more on that.
Oh, yeah. So at least there are a couple of those that are important ones. So basically, we keep covering more data sources as mattermost than some others, but the two new ones are the community structure analysis. This is based on the kind of old paper that basically says, well, we have, and this is kind of our analysis. So we have the core, regular, and casual developers. Basically, we have the community structure of this across over time. So we know for basically each of the quarters how many core developers that are those doing 80% of the activity, or regular developers doing those up to 95%, or casual developers doing those up to the rest 5% are evolving over time. And then those developers I have some echo. Blah blah blah. Oh, now it's working. Thank you, Matt. So then the idea is that you have all of that information over time per quarter, and then we have the same information, the same analysis community structure at the level of the organization. So you know the core, regular, and casual developers for each of the companies, and then you have same level at the level of project. So you know the core, regular, and casual developers for each of the projects, and then you can have things like, okay, this developer is being core here and here, but regular in this and this project, and then this developer is basically casual in this project, and then you can have the overtime analysis for that one. And then the other one is the areas of code. The idea is that you can work and play with data at the level of file path. So you can look for, the idea is to look for areas of knowledge for each of the developers or organizations. So if it happens that you are a company or you're a community manager, and then you have some developers, important ones that left the community, you know where those developers were working at, and then perhaps you want to hire new ones, or you want to move some resources there or something. So those are the two.
Okay, cool.
With respect to also, we finished the paper. Sorry.
You got to be quick.
We have the paper on Cregit. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about Cregit. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to distribute it and to the list. And I think the most important information for this group is we empirically evaluate blame per line and its accuracy, and in 5 major open source projects.
Okay, cool.
And for Augur, we've implemented.
Hold on for Cregit. This is a paper you have, Daniel?
Yes.
Was it
this
a public?
is the description of the tool. So we're going to submit it this week, but I'm going to start distributing anyway.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Sean?
And on Augur, we've done a series of new releases that make it easier for newcomers to start using it. And we've also implemented a number of the features that are in Facade currently, so that you can mine individual repos and get those kinds of pieces of information. Made some modifications to our visualizations so that it's easier for new developers to add visualizations and do comparisons across repositories. And we've got a dashboard now that connects to the growth, maturity, and decline and other working group statuses, so that you can see which metrics are implemented in Augur and which ones aren't, and what things are implemented in Augur that aren't defined as metrics right now, but have been discussed.
Okay. I do for all of, is that it, Sean?
Yep.
Okay. So for all of these tools, whether it's Cregit or Augur or Grimoire Lab, I do recommend everybody on the call to always kind of keep up with doing downloads and installs, just so you can always post issues if you can't get it working, or you can ask questions. If there's a good test community, I think it's certainly this community right here. So let's help each other out.
I would also like to float the idea that when we do have updates, like new versions with several new features, we do have a blog on the CHAOSS website, and that might be a good way to distribute that information.
Cool. Thank you. Amy.
Jörg, how can we contribute to the blog? Because I have never had that here.
You can write a blog post, and we do have a website repository where you can just upload the markdown file, and then Kevin will post it on the WordPress blog.
But should we submit as a pull request, or?
Yes, a pull request is perfect.
Good, thank you.
Okay. So I want to, Amy is joining us to talk about OpenStack.
Hi, Amy.
Hello.
Amy, you've been very patient. Thank you.
I multitask. I actually went to an OpenStack meeting.
Are you serious?
Well, it's an IRC, so we could multitask. That's why we like IRC. We can go multiple
Cool. All right, well, the floor is yours.
So basically, we're getting ready to release the OpenStack survey. And Mark, when we were first coming up with the new draft, was like, how can CHAOSS be involved? So we had a little bit of an email thread yesterday, all with good points on how you guys can be involved. The only thing I do need to mention to you is that there will be an NDA involved for participating and helping us with the statistics. So as long as CHAOSS is good on that end, I think we're good to go ahead and send out the survey, let our survey participants know that CHAOSS will be involved, because we wanted to be upfront with that, and that you guys will be helping to collate the data and will be using the data on your own side.
Okay.
Can you be explicit in terms of the NDA? Maybe send it to the mail list so we know exactly what you're asking for.
Okay, I'll have to get that from the OpenStack Foundation. But basically just saying that you know, privacy for the individuals if there is individual type information in the responses. For the most part, we're hoping that it'll all be selected a choice, but we will be giving everyone the opportunity on most questions to fill in another text blob.
Okay.
And it's just, you know, so like we do this also with the user survey that we send out, and there might be I doubt in this particular one, but on the user survey, there can be confidential company information, and we just don't want that shared out.
Yeah, so I think that to translate that to our nomenclature, that sounds more like ethics approval in our university environment in terms of the handling of the information, rather than an NDA. So, but I think it would be good that you actually are explicit in terms of what you require.
Okay, and I will get that from the OpenStack Foundation, and I will
share.
Yeah, and I'll figure out where the best place to send it to is.
Okay. Sounds good. When are you planning, Amy? When are you planning on running the survey?
I'd like to get it out next week. We've been working on this since we restarted the diversity group in December.
Okay.
So it'd be nice to get it out. That way we can discuss the results at OpenStack Summit in November for sure.
Okay. So that's the goal is then to run the survey and have the results.
Yeah, and we'll give them like 2 months, and then if we don't get a really good response, we'll go, hey guys, remember our survey? Okay. I think we got maybe a 6 to 10% response when we did it 3 years ago.
Okay.
So it's not great numbers.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
And on the NDA, obviously, if you want to flag this to Kate, I think that makes sense. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Mark, do you want me to send it to you and then you can forward it to the right groups?
You can send it to me.
Okay, I'll get it from Allison.
All right, cool. Got that, Ray and Amy. Anything else, Amy?
Nope, that's it.
All right, cool. Sounds great. Let's see. We have 2 minutes. I had one item that I would like to put out there. We have a wiki. Does anybody know this? Remember we started with a wiki?
I thought we moved away from it, no?
Can we shut it down altogether?
That's what I thought. Okay, so we don't have a wiki.
Well, it's still there.
Oh.
It's alive.
It's dormant, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we can run everything through the web page.
So that's the idea, that we move everything off. There's 1 or 2 things that I still maintain on the wiki, like the meeting minutes I still post there.
Can we put them on the website?
Yeah, we just have to find a place on the website, and then we can shut down the wiki.
Yeah, because I'd like to just have the list, the wiki, or the list, the website, and then the GitHub repos. To me, that really sends a sense.
Matt, now that you talk about the list, maybe it's time to discuss about changing the name of the list to CHAOSS something.
As opposed to OSS health metrics?
I don't think we have moved yet to the new group IO.
No, they stopped. They actually stopped. So they were doing this whole new like change from mailman to group.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. And then I got an email because I remember we just sent out a thing that said, hey, it's going to change here shortly. Yeah. And then there was an email that showed up maybe 2 weeks later that said, yeah, actually, we're not doing that anymore. We stopped. So I don't quite know.
That was like one of the last emails I read before I left the foundation, but I think there were enough communities that wanted to stay with Mailman, and they said, okay, we're not going to force people to do it. So I think that's where things were, if I remember correctly.
Okay, it didn't even sound like they were giving you the option to switch if you wanted.
Yeah, But yeah, I mean, if people are, I assume people are okay with the Mailman tool. I didn't really have a problem with that. We can just stay as is and just change the name, I guess. But
maybe we can just decide on the name and ask administrators to change it whenever they want, or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe I'll. Do you have a name in mind? In the
CHAOSS. I would like to keep it simple. CHAOSS.
Just chaos.
We do have.
Call it the CHAOSS. The CHAOSS.
Yeah. The CHAOSS, you mean, right?
Exactly.
So we do have mailing lists, several already. One is CHAOSS Discuss, one is CHAOSS Discussions that we can move to, and they already exist. So it's just a matter of getting everyone onto those.
Well, yeah, it might be. I think the Jesus is coming. I kind of agree.
CHAOSS discussion is for the board, isn't it?
No, I think it's CHAOSS members is a board. if I
Okay.
remember correctly.
Just rename the list so something that makes sense, because there's confusion. So if I want to email, which is the email that I should use? Is there a public one? Is there a members one? Is there?
Yeah, we should just call it chaos@lists.linuxfoundation.org. To me, that would make the most sense. This is the one, and this is where we all discuss everything, and we can.
And then we have CHAOSS board.
Yeah.
Because no, the problem is that CHAOSS members is maybe a bit misleading in the sense that maybe some people believe they are members of the CHAOSS community and they think CHAOSS members is my list. So maybe
But it's
CHAOSS,
not listed publicly, so it's not a concern.
I will.
That's right. It is not publicly listed. You mean?
Correct. Publicly listed, we have CHAOSS Discuss, CHAOSS Discussions, CHAOSS Software.
Okay, CHAOSS software is deprecated, so we can even remove it if you want. And I don't remember the other two were what they were for.
Yeah, really, all we use is OSS health metrics. I mean, that's the one that is currently used all the time.
Okay, yeah, I think so. So maybe we can just rename it to CHAOSS and remove the others.
Yep,
and that's
agreed.
it.
Agreed. Okay, I'll put that on my to-do list. Everybody, this is a very lively discussion, so thank you very much for being here, and we will talk soon. I'll get these minutes out.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.